Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing okay on this very fine day. I have an amazing guest joining us. Hello to Alice, who is a website designer, a copywriter, and an SEO strategist. Is that right, Alice?
Yes, spot on.
So, yeah. And Alice is with us here today because we want to talk about our, let's call it, unconventional ways to lead to coming towards where we are now in our careers. And Alice, as you'll hear throughout the conversation, has had many different kind of milestones and checkpoints in her journey that led her now to where she is. So I'm really excited to chat about how you end up being where you are, and then how, on reflection, you know that all of the experiences that led you to where you are now helped you instead of kind of held you back, which I think is often what our society tries to tell us and warn us about. If you stray away from a cliche and niche and like one single path of your so-called career, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, I design websites and I'm a copywriter. And when I first started actually running a business and offering what I do to other people, rather than just like writing for myself for fun, as
Yep.
I'm sure I think you said earlier that you did as well. And I think lots of people I've spoken to in our kind of community space is that we don't necessarily have like a traditional training in what we're doing now, and people are paying us for specific services that we provide now.
Yep.
But I'm not trained as a copywriter. I'm not a graphic designer. The very first few clients I had, I was like totally self-taught. I basically just read a shit ton of blogs online, and because I was passionate about it, I wanted to share that with other people. But at the time, I was working at a surf school, worked in surf schools for about 15 years, with various other totally random things interspersed. Like I helped run a ski school for 3 years in Japan. I taught ballet to like 5 to 7-year-olds while I was still at school. I've worked as like a hotel reservation specialist. And when I started to like understand everyone else in my space and see not necessarily who my competitors were, but maybe like aspirationally where I wanted to, they were where I could see myself in however many years, kind of in the marketing space, there was a lot of information that I was getting that, oh, this is my training, this is where I did this degree in marketing, this is where I've got this certificate in this thing that makes it kind of legitimizes what they're doing. And I didn't have any of that. I mean, I did do a degree in English literature, but that's literally reading like poems and Shakespeare, and it's not creative. It's not thinking about writing for a particular audience. It's totally on a completely different track. So when I first started out, I saw everyone else doing what they were doing, and immediately I was like, oh God, I can't offer this. I can't ask people to pay me money for this. I've worked in surf schools for 15 years. I know there's the stereotype that surfers are not the most organized or eloquent or necessarily sociable people. That I was like, okay, well, how do I tell my story about how I've got here? Because people are going to think, oh, she's got no training. She's been like bumming around on the beach all day for half of her life. Why would we pay her money to like help us with our writing for our business, or like help sell what we have to offer to the world? And yeah, it was that level of comparison of they're all up here, I feel down here. So like, is there any point in me trying to sell what I do? Because I'm nowhere near the level of what everyone else is doing. But as the conversation we had the other week was, what I found over time is there are skills from all these totally random jobs that I've kind of like plucked out that only in hindsight, probably like 18 months into running my own business, did I realize actually I have skills that other copywriters don't have. I have skills that other graphic designers don't have. And if you can find those seemingly random skills or techniques that you've learned to bring that extra value to what you do, okay, it might not be the traditional copywriter, but actually if you can communicate that extra little bit of something magic, then that sets you apart from everyone else.
Yeah. How, so I have two questions on the top of my mind, and it was more in the back of my mind. So how did you decide to start your own business, knowing, kind of seeing at that time the gap between people who you aspired to and where you were? Like, kind of what made you still believe in yourself and be like, no, I want to start this disregarding the gap that you saw? And was there, like, do you remember a specific moment where you realized that all of your past experiences were actually a strength, and like they add like more value to your skills portfolio rather than a weakness because you don't have like a specific certificate or a degree or training in something, but just like realizing, oh, these are actually my strengths and they help me in running the business, not the other way around?
Yeah, so the first question, like when did I decide that I wanted to run my own business? I think it was after a lot of seasonal work, and anyone who's ever worked in like tourism or hospitality, doesn't matter where in the world, you have like busy season, and then the rest of the year is so quiet, and there's like nothing to do. And where I live in Cornwall, I live by the sea, and I don't grow up here, but most of the people in town are from elsewhere, and they move here because they want the lifestyle. They want to work on the beach, they want to spend evenings like in the surf, or like it's a bit more of an outdoorsy lifestyle, and like so many people move down here to be able to experience that. So in order to have that lifestyle, we kind of sacrifice work to an extent because there isn't that much choice. So we all work in like activity centers or hotels, restaurants, the things that, you know, that in that tourism industry that is mega busy down here, at least in the summer. And we sacrifice that. We sacrifice, I think, that consistency of like a 9 to 5 job where you get your weekends off, you get your evenings off, because we want that lifestyle. So you're like expected to work, like slog your butt off in the summertime, have the freedom in the winter, because there's no work, and there's again that expectation that you'll just like pick up some random job that you know nothing about. Like I worked in a hotel for 4 or 5 months, and it was like one of the worst jobs I've ever had. But it was like there's that expectation that that's what you do. If you want this lifestyle, you have to sacrifice that. And it got to the point where I'd done that cycle, that routine for so many years, that I was like, I can't sustain this. Like I've got enough like contacts in Cornwall. I'd, you know, done a bit of like SEO and blog writing for the surf school, that I was like, actually, I want something that's more sustainable. It gives me more of that freedom in the summer. I don't have to like, slog at work to get, and I get my evenings off, and I get my weekends, and I get that flexibility. And it was that turning point where I was thinking, living down here, I don't have to sacrifice all those things to have this lifestyle. And I mean, in town, you could like, there are so many like new and innovative businesses, but I think it's a really common story down here, at least, or in ski resorts, or in other like coastal towns, or other places that are like popular with tourists. That was kind of a turning point to think, okay, I've done this long enough. I want that like consistency of work, but I want that freedom as well. I don't want to have to sacrifice this lifestyle. So I was at that point, I was very detached from like peers, other copywriters, other designers. And then as I'm like trying to absorb all this information, that's when I start to see, oh my God, this copywriter's been writing for 25 years and they've written for BA and Harrods and Coca-Cola and all of this. And okay, they're 25 years further on their business than I am. It still leaves you that like, is it okay for me to do this? Like, I don't have those accolades. And I mean, I think coronavirus had a huge deal to do with me just putting my all into it and trying to like shut out all of that information, even though I was like still scrolling however many days on Instagram, it's still there. But I think the whole coronavirus, like being stuck inside, I didn't have, you know, if I wanted to go back to the surf school at that point, I couldn't because they were closed. So that was definitely like a decision that I didn't have to make, that was made for me. And then that's kind of, at least the start of coronavirus was like when I was like fully immersed in, oh my God, I don't have a story to tell on how I got here because I've been like splashing around in the sea for however many years. And as I said, like, surfers are considered bums. And okay, I did end up like doing some like managerial roles because I was doing it for such a long time, and we had like customers, we were doing advanced coaching. But if you see that like that distance from holiday job, people go and do it for fun, no one takes it seriously, to I'm charging people thousands of pounds to write websites that are gonna either make the money or not. Like that huge gap, I just saw that huge space and I was like, I don't know how to fill that space. How do I rationalize that jump from one thing to the other? And your second question was like, was it, when did I realize what I could do with the skills that I have?
Not necessarily what you could do with them, but rather kind of realizing that they have a space in your current business rather than being separate parts of your journey. Like it wasn't so much of turning a new page, but it was rather melding all the kind of chapters together in a way and seeing, okay, so from all of your past experiences, they now all have a place in what you do and what you offer to people.
I don't think there was like a light bulb moment, but I think it happens kind of on the job. Part of what I do when I do copywriting for people is we look at their brand message and their story and their values and what extra value they can bring to their own business. And me being that distanced, detached, outside viewer, and understanding their business, I can see connections that they cannot make. Because when you're working in your business, you're like this, aren't you? It's like the wood for the trees. You're just stuck in the everyday, and that bigger picture stuff, like, so hard to get into. So for me, having that distance, I could help other people make those connections that they couldn't make. Because I'll send people various questionnaires, or we'll have like little interviews just so I can really dig deep into what sets them apart. And half the time, these people are like, I don't know what sets me apart. I'm a jeweler, I'm a photographer, everyone else does it. What makes it special? And I'm like, well, you do. Okay, you might have identical products to someone else, but you are the differentiator because, okay, for example, like a website designer recently that I wrote their copy for their website, she was like, I don't really know what sets me apart. And I'm like, well, every conversation we've had is the fact that you have just had to drop your kids off from school and you've only got like an hour free every other day to actually work on your business. And that's your differentiator, because if you can appeal to other parents, you have a similar experience. You know, okay, you know, they only have so much time a day. How can you develop your services to appeal to that specific person that only has this much time? Or they're doing it at the end of the day when they've just put their kids to bed, but they've only got like half an hour because they're flipping knackered. And I think it was through doing that over and over again that I started to like have that reflection on
Yeah.
what I um and when I think it really came out. I was rewriting my about page, and I think I wrote like 20 iterations of it. And every time I was like, "Oh, this is weird," and I feel really uncomfortable. Even though I
Yeah.
do it for other people, I
Yeah.
still find it weird doing it for myself. And I was like, I just couldn't work out what to say. And eventually, I came up with this idea that in all the jobs that I've had, they're all client facing. So with teaching ballet when I was younger, you'd have to make, the parents would want their little princess to do really well and want special attention, and you have to somehow manage that with the parents and make them feel like their child's the most special child in the world, more just better
Mm.
than all the other children. Or in surf coaching, okay, you've got 3 beginner lessons, and one's like 10-year-olds, one's like some retirees, and one is a stag do, and you've got to teach exactly the same skills to all 3 groups of people,
Well,
but they take in information differently. They understand different concepts, or some might understand like more technical concepts than others. And so I realized was I was able to explain exactly the same thing, but in 3 entirely different ways for 3 different audiences. And that was kind of my starting point when I realized, actually, if I can find something from surf instructing which is so far from marketing and copywriting, then there's got to be some way that you can pull out those valuable skills from
yeah.
what you do to make that something extra special, kind of that superpower.
Yeah.
That, yeah, I don't have like formal marketing training. I've read a few books. I've done a lot of online training. I've practiced a lot, but I don't have a degree in marketing. I haven't been on the copywriting team for BA who
Yeah.
you learn from people and their processes. Like, I've come up with my own processes because they work for the people that I work with. But I think when we were talking about just before we jumped on live, you were saying it kind of resonates with you as well. Like, the different parts of your businesses seem totally different, but actually it's similar skills that run them all, and maybe your own journey isn't as traditional to get to where you are, but
Yeah.
that just gives you a totally different outlook on it, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, for example, I started working from, I think I was 14, turning 15 that summer, something like that. And my that first summer, my first job was I was a personal assistant to a theater director, because every summer in my home city, there's like a big festival, like a children's festival that goes on for a week
Yeah.
or even more. I think it's for a week. And so that summer, I was a PA for the theater director and for the festival, that doubled the festival director. And then at the same summer, just like a different, that was in June, and in August, I was helping in like a bookstore, but preparing books that go out for the students in the classrooms. And then you need to like organize and set, like categorize all the books. You need to put them in their covers, etc., etc. The next couple of summers, I continued doing the festival and the bookstore. I worked as a tourist information person in a national park, because I'm fluent in a lot of different languages, so I really love that job. So I was meeting hundreds of people every single day through the national park, because it's really popular. And when I became older, it was like I was 17 and 18. I would also be like how do you call it, not a promoter on events.
Sure.
So then again, like now I needed to, so now I didn't only speak kind of to customers, I also had this kind of forming a relationship with clients as well, like with the brand and everything. So now I was more into the business stuff. And then I went to uni, and and kind of during that time, even though that was the professional side of things, in my personal side of things, I was uh, teaching myself how to use Photoshop and design websites, because
On top,
having
on top
yeah,
of all your languages, that's like one extra language, mate. I'm
but
so
yeah, exactly. Like I think I was like 12 or 13. Blogs were becoming, like, personal blogs were really popular, and I couldn't find a theme for the blog that I really liked. So I just decided, oh fuck it, I'll design it myself. Like how hard can it be? It was really hard, but I managed. And yeah, like I was also in music school. I went into I went into uh, three different language classes, extra math and physics. Like, I was all over the place because everything interested me, and I just followed my curiosity wherever it will take me.
yeah.
But then, for example, when I reached uni and I studied geospatial engineering for my first major, now I'm in computer engineering and computer science. But everything that I do on the side is really creative. So it's like there was always, like, I could see there's something off/special about me, because people couldn't decide which faculty I should go into. Like, should I go study like French and English, or should I go study like art history? Should I go study engineering because I have a maths brain? Like, there were so many different possible paths for me, because I was all over the place. And as I say, it's a curse and a blessing. I was really good at whatever I started, because I'm a fast learner, and when I'm passionate about something, I really hyper focus, and I delve into the thing. Um, yeah, so I kind of, all of those experiences, as I said, like, it's everything at once. But by the time I reached university, so my academic education is now streamlined into engineering, right? But I started. I was ahead of the IT section, because by that time I really liked um, like developing websites and creating for other people. Me kind of delving then more into graphic design. I was the chief graphic editor of the student magazine, and me building relationships with business owners back then made me kind of start creating my own projects, and then kind of doing the same, but just like I wasn't the person fulfilling the tasks, I was the person creating the projects and then putting everything together. And yeah, so I kind of, in retrospect, I can see how every single one of my experiences that I had until any particular point in life helped me do everything that followed better, because I always kind of see it as building blocks, basically. Like, the blocks are different shape and different colors, so they don't necessarily make sense on the outside, but you can still puzzle them together and get like a very nice looking shape that's colorful. And yeah.
I don't know whether it's intentional, but you're branded
Yeah.
perfectly like that.
And it wasn't, yeah, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't something that I could articulate back then when I was doing the branding, but our brand designer, who's of course very skilled at what she does, was able to nitpick everything that I said to her as well, and then create this. And we also have like, this background is one colorway, but there's also like two separate colorways to kind of the same patterns, different color palettes, just to kind of emphasize more not only like my individualistic traits and differences that I had as a singular human being on this earth, but individualistic traits of every single one of us that come into like coexisting in the community. And that's what I really love, and that's why as I said, like, I really was so happy when you messaged me and said, "Oh, Frank, I have a conversation that I think we should have, because I feel really strongly that this is a topic that's important. And I truly think that it is, because so many of us feel kind of constrained. And I know that for a long while I thought really, uh, really strongly, I thought that something's wrong with me, because I couldn't find the one thing that I want to be doing. I was
Mm.
always all over the place, and I performed like I am my best self when I'm all over the place. That's how I get my ducks in the row. If you give me one thing, I'm bored to death, and like I can't exist. But yeah, kind of getting signals from the society. It's almost always about, okay, sorry, but like you need to niche down. You need to grow up and choose one thing, and then be good at that one thing, which I think is a as much as a generational difference, a generational gap.
Mm.
It's also I always question, and I was like, come back to people and say, who's like, can you show me where is that stated? Like, where is the rule written that I should then be following it?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And definitely growing up, there was that, like, you're going through school, you'll go to secondary school, you'll go to college, you'll go to uni, you'll get a job that's related to your degree.
Yeah.
And I think I went to school and into uni in Cardiff. So there were people from like all over the UK. And honestly, I think 85 to 90% of the people that I went to uni with went to London. That was just like what everyone was doing. Oh, I don't know what to do after uni. Everyone else is doing this. I'll do it too. And I mean, I'd already like got work in Cornwall in like the holidays, but I mean, it just didn't feel right to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
I got bullied really badly in school, and we lived in like near Reading, but we'd always gone to Cornwall on the school holidays, and that was kind of like my safe space. It was away from school and all these people that said you have to do this, you have to do this. Me feeling incredibly uncomfortable. So I was already like determined to be there because I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to remove myself from that. Like, you have to be like this. Why are you not like this? Everyone else is like this.
Yeah.
Because you're not behaving the same as everyone else, then we're gonna pick on you
Yeah.
and make your life really horrible. So
Yeah.
I'd already had this like determination for wanting to move to Cornwall, just like getting away from, yeah, people at school, that environment, because being down in Cornwall, it was again like a bit, everyone had come from everywhere. There were a few like locals, but everyone had come from everywhere. They all had their own reasons for being there. And that was like my like community space. So when I finished uni and everyone was like, we're going to London, we're gonna do this, we're gonna work 17 hours a day, I was like, I'm going back to Cornwall to live on the beach again. Thank you very
Mm.
much. And then you get like friends of parents, or like I remember my grandpa being like, when are you going to get a real job? And
Yeah.
at this point I was like making good money. I'd worked there long enough that I knew how to like manage lots of things, and I ran the booking system and was doing like outreach to collaborate with other people and doing all of the merchandising and ordering and stuff by the time that I'd spent 10, 15 years there. And then it's funny, like that, moving away from expectations of having a proper job, I then kind of got bored with that seasonal work, that I was like, right, well, I'm going to have a more traditional looking job that I'm sitting on a computer. And then I just kind of rediscover all of this. You have to do this. You have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, like all of that time on social media at the start, when I'm seeing what everyone else is doing, they're all like, you have to have a YouTube channel. You have to give away loads of value for free. And I think that it feeling of inadequacy manifests itself in like working so many hours, giving so much content away for free, that I kind of felt I had to just prove myself
Yeah.
to say, I can be here. I can do this job if I don't have that traditional route. And yes, you can look back on my past and all my past jobs and think, there's no linear route to where you are now that's not logical. But as you've already said, it's that realization that does take a bit of time, that all the jobs you've done have brought you to where you are and make that extra, that what you do that special. Because as you said, you know, if you're working for as a PA for someone, you've got to have that organizational skills. You've got to like keep tons of stuff in your working memory. Working in like computer design, you understand the technical sides. I mean, your design and your recording is flawless, I have to tell you.
Thank you.
Your communications from like working on a tourist board, you can see that in all of your podcasts. Like, you're good at keeping the conversation going and talking to kind of anyone. And if you like gave someone your CV and said like, right, what do you think she's doing now? No one would guess this, but actually it makes so much sense because you're
Yeah.
using all those skills to bring them all together. That just brings that something extra that so many other people don't have. And I think it's something that more people need to do, especially if they're feeling like, well, like I said already, the clients that I've had, and they're like, well, I'm the same as everyone else. I do the same thing as everyone else, or I have identical products, or exactly the same pricing, or I live in exactly the same place, or all of those things. And it's just taking a little bit of time, even like someone, like even a peer, just to have that conversation to say, like, one, I need support, and feeling not that vulnerable in order to ask someone openly, because it just makes you so much more excited about what you do, because no one has.
Yeah.
I don't know another copywriter who's worked in a ski school in Japan for 3 years and had a very I don't know what the word is, very trying working environment, volatile at times with some of the stuff, but they can see positives from that. That is like makes my business what it is now.
Yeah, and I have so many things to touch upon. I think um, going with the most recent thing you said, I think that even the, let's say, yeah, kind of trying experiences that we had in our past,
Mm-hmm.
for me, for example, they manifest in, okay, so I know how I don't want to be in my business, or have my business kind of affect me, or if I'm now when I'm a team leader and I have some people that work for me and help me in my day to day, I know if I had like a bad experience with a manager or CEO or team leader or whatever, I don't want to show up that way. So even like every experience has a lesson basically, and whether it's personal or professional, you always know, okay, so this is how I don't want to be, right? And yeah, I think that's very important. I can. It will be it will be easier for me if I just like sit here and cry to you how I've had so many horrible experiences throughout my life, and it's not fair, which is sad for anyone to go through terrible experiences. But for me, the way to kind of go past them and like through them and past them, or like over surpass them, is okay. So what is this experience trying to teach me? It's not necessarily, and there's a difference between, which I've just learned recently. It's not always like the answer to what is this experience trying to teach me is not necessarily that you need to internalize the experience and find that there was a problem within you. Often the problem is with the other person who is reflecting whatever they are going through on you, and you're just like casual damage, like collateral damage in their own journey and in their own experience. And then kind of having these two things in your mind, that it's often it's not you, like as similar as you, I was also bullied throughout like kindergarten and school as well. And for a lot of years, I just thought that I deserved to be bullied because I was different than most of the kids I was around with.
Yeah.
And now, like so many years back, like I'm turning 28. I always forget how old I am. I'm turning 20. I literally need to calculate every single time. Like, what is 2022 minus 1994? Anyways, so yeah, so we're almost, yeah, like the better part of my almost 28 years of life. I am now learning that I was made to feel that way. It's not that like it, impacts and kind of doings, whether they are wrongdoings or good doings of other people, have no relationship with my value as a person. And kind of having that realization helps me kind of go through all of make leave those experiences in the past and not let them haunt me anymore, because for a long time, because they haunt you in a way because they remind you that you are ill-equipped. Like every new thing that I started doing, you always hear like those kind of bad fans in the like under your ear. It's like, ah, you shouldn't be like this is shit. You have no idea what you're doing. Like you have no qualifications to be doing this. And took me a long time to kind of mute them and then kind of just like have them be an audience separate from whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of, yeah, that's something that I would kind of recommend everyone try to reach that point and just like have that reframe in your head that when you go through the experiences that you have been through, try to separate yourself from the experience and look as similar to what you're doing now in your professional life. Be an observer, like you're the observer from other people and their businesses. And the same mechanism is when you're trying to observe your own life, just like that kind of passed by you. It's like, okay, so okay, this situation happened, what did I learn, without internalizing and thinking it was because of something that I did, because it's very rarely so.
Yeah, I think it's so important to not just like ignore those voices that are like, you shouldn't be doing this, other people are doing it so much better, you don't have this traditional route to where you're doing or traditional training, you're charging too much. All of those questions, I think when you have that resistance and like that feeling, like that like bodily feeling of like, I don't want to do this, it's for me, I procrastinate like crazy. I've learned recently from speaking to lots of reading lots from professional psychologists, that it's more important to like acknowledge that that's there and think, like, as you said, take that step back and think, okay, what is this saying? What am I feeling? Why is that? Is it because I'm spending too much time on Instagram? Is it because I've seen someone's launched this thing? Is it because I've just read about someone that's doing something 10 times better than you are? And not ignoring it, but acknowledging it's there and think, okay, well, is it because I'm just paying too much attention? And then, at least for me, reminding myself that I have all of these skills from all of the totally random jobs.
Yeah.
Random jobs. We can put random in inverted commas now. Because, and I just, it's that reminding of myself that I have things that other people don't. They have things that I don't. But, you know, when it comes to finding clients, they're the ones that get to make that choice. And some people will prefer your competitor or whoever it is. And some people will prefer you because you have those skills. And seeing it from that distanced standpoint, rather than, like you said, internalizing it or like pushing it away, ignoring it, procrastinating for half a day, a whole day, a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. But
uh,
I think, yeah. So, kind of do. Oh God, I have so many flying thoughts in my head. It's hard to kind of catch them and be like, wait. Okay. So, I think that the reason why it's important not to ignore the voices and acknowledge them, and this is I can speak from experience because I try to ignore them as well, because like I I procrastinate, and I feel like I'm paralyzed if I listen to them too much. And then my medicine for that was I'll just act like they don't exist, and I'll hyper focus on like achieving as much as I can, not to prove myself, but just to shut them out, to kind of give them like,
distraction.
yeah, to have to be to distract myself from them, and also so that my brain doesn't have like a spare minute of time to deal with what's going on here.
Mm,
And even though in that period of time I was in a traditional sense, I was really successful. Like I got some, like I got a couple of awards. I was back in uni. Couple of awards, did a lot of projects, published a lot of scientific papers. Like I was, yeah, kind of traditionally on top of my game. But at the same time, I feel disconnected from everything that I accomplished then,
yeah.
because I was I was just flying through everything. I wasn't consciously and intentionally moving through the experiences. I was just flying, and before one was finished, I was already mentally on the next one. And I never stopped and looked back and thought, wow, all of these things I've managed to do. So now when I look back, it feels like someone just has written my name and surname on those certificates or awards, because I I can't, I don't remember I did them. And that's because I was so keen, and I was, yeah, obsessing, to being distracted from those voices and from those kind of, yeah, traumatic things that were haunting me, that I was carrying on my shoulders the entire time, that I just kind of distanced myself. Sure, it was in like it was uh for the outside channeled in a good way, because I accomplished so many things. But looking back, I don't feel them as it was channeled in a good way.
Mm,
Because it's really, really, as I said, it's fine. It's success on paper. It
mm,
doesn't feel success for me.
mhm. Yeah, I think that it can definitely manifest itself in so many ways, can't it? Whether it's comparison or feeling of inadequacy,
Yeah,
or feeling unproductive, or like you should be achieving more, or yeah, like you said, the little voices of that like traditional route. Yeah, like as you said, it can manifest in just going like full steam ahead,
yeah,
just putting the blinkers on, not even, yeah,
yeah,
not just being on, like, I guess it's kind of like autopilot, right?
yeah,
For me it's either distraction, sorry, procrastination, and I just do, like, my brain just can't focus on the one thing I need to focus on, because I'm like, well, what if I do it really badly?
hmm,
Another way that it's definitely manifested itself when I first started my business was like just totally ignoring any boundaries that I had. And I had a process to work with clients that I'd repeat again and again. And when I would find those people who have a traditional training in what they're doing, and certifications or degrees or fancy badges on their website, those first few people, I was like, oh God, they can probably do my job as well as I can. So whatever they say, I'll do. And I just let down all of my boundaries. I kind of let them just kind of take the reins, even though they were paying me to do the job. They'd obviously thought, okay, I want to pick Alice to design my website or write my copy for this particular reason. But because I thought they were, and I mean, none of them were copywriters or website designers, but because I felt like in their industry they had
yeah,
that, they were legitimate, again, quotation, air
Yeah, yeah,
quotes,
yeah.
that I felt that inadequacy, even though it was a totally different industry or a totally different job, or they were selling something different, or they were
Yeah,
whatever it was,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
let down all of those barriers and those boundaries and systems that I had. Or, you know, there was certain cases where someone would say, oh, well, I don't agree with this. And I would have a perfectly logical reason why. But because I was in that like fear state, I was like, okay, I'll change it. And looking back on those projects now, I can see exactly what happened. I was like
Mm-hmm.
feeling totally inadequate to someone who's not a copywriter or website designer, which I
Yeah,
mean, to anyone is totally illogical, but it totally happened. And
yeah, because we end up putting people in pedestals, and
mm,
then that's what creates the gap. And it's like, okay, I listen to you because you're higher on the hierarchy than I am in a certain thing.
but like you said, um, it's those experiences that make you understand what you do and don't want to do
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah,
And I remember watching so many videos when I first started my business, you know, those free trainings and webinars that you have no intention of paying for the thing that they're selling, but you're like, I'm just going to soak up all the free stuff. And they're like, set boundaries. Like, don't listen to your inner saboteur, set your boundaries, write them down. And I was like, oh, this is all bollocks. Like, I'm totally fine. You don't need to tell me about like my inner saboteur. I'm fine by myself. And then it actually happens. And then I think that's
yeah,
honestly the only way that I've learned is through
mm,
experience.
yeah,
But now I know exactly what I want. I know I kind of have that, what's the word? Contingency plan. If those things crop up now, I know what they are. I know the feelings that I get when I'm seeing that person. I've put that person on the pedestal by myself.
yeah,
Um, I know how it manifests, at least for me. And I mean, yeah, you could try and teach me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, what those things were, and but I think it's really only from like experience that you learn them. And I
yeah,
mean, that sucks for anyone who's listening who's at the first the first few months of your business. I mean, you'll have shitty clients, we all do, but I think it's only really from experience that you're like, this is how not to do it,
yeah,
so you're going to set those boundaries better next time. And taking it back to working for other people and those skills that we've learned from working in all of these other jobs is that you see how not to do things, and you can set yourself apart from that. And you say, I've experienced what it's like to be on the receiving end of this. So
mm-hmm.
if I'm working with a client, if I'm outsourcing, I know what that relationship needs to be to make them feel good about it. Which again, like people who have like traditional training, as opposed to like real life real life training. That sounds really wanky, doesn't it? Sorry, I just don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah,
Um,
we swear, don't worry.
yeah, the real life training, without
Yeah,
sounding wanky about it, um, is just a whole different kettle of fish. And I mean, I'm not trying to knock people who have had traditional training, because you know so much, you know all these different things that I don't, but I know other things that you don't. So
that's true, and I have always had mixed feelings about education and academia, all of that in general. Um, because like I'm someone who really loves to learn, but the school, the education system here, education system in the majority of the world is not really fitted for someone like whose brains functions as mine necessarily. Like we had to learn a lot of things like by memory. Like it was it wasn't that we were taught to think, we were taught to learn like a paragraph exactly word by word with commas and everything in our head, and that was
it's absorption, isn't it? You're absorbing it rather than something that you can actually apply.
Yeah, yeah,
I wish they taught me about flipping taxes at school.
yeah, exactly. Or even like like critical thinking or something like that. I remember, and like I was, because I was very curious, I was that annoying student who always asked why. And 9 out of 10, the response was because I said so, or because that's how it is. It was like someone somewhere must have decided why. And I always wanted like to kind of deepen my understanding. And I remember like me learning history, because it was really hard for me kind of to learn and remember all the years and stuff. I would draw story, like I would draw comic books almost like of like history lessons, because that's the way I would then remember the visuals, tell the story in my head, and then to like yeah, uh, correct that story in my head and then articulate it to the professor. Or like for the math classes, I always needed to know, like I will have trouble remembering the kind of the end formula, like the most important one, but I will know how to reach it with the entire like theorem behind. I will start from there and then I will reach the formula, which was, technically that means that I know how to reach the solution even without just remembering the formula, and I know how to think. But I was kind of greeted by, you're too slow, or this took like too long of a time, or you need to know that formula in your sleep, which I never could. So I will always get like lower grade. Like I was, yeah, I always felt demotivated with my approach to learning in the education system. So that I thought, okay, so there's definitely something wrong with me, because from my teachers and professors who have authority, because they are where they are, and their sole purpose is to teach us and to learn us something, how to go through the world, through life. I must be doing something wrong, and something must be wrong with me. And I think kind of having having that belief for a long while, for a long time, um, kind of slowed me down in how I was moving with myself as an individual through the world. And it kind of, yeah, it contributed to this kind of a lot of, yeah, traditionalistic thinking, that the way that I feel that I want to do things is always wrong, because wrong 9 out of the 10 times throughout my education, which is the big, like first big system you are kind of brought up in when you start thinking about whatever it is. And then I think that really shapes us as people. So being always like an outsider and an outlier of sorts, it it's difficult to accept yourself as a multi-hyphenate human being, multi-passionate human being, because you're constantly put in a box, which you're, yeah, not fitting. Like there's always like one limb going outside of the box, because it just doesn't fit. Um, but yeah, what I wanted to say with this is that we are, from a very young age, we are shaped by systems that we are in, whether they are big as an education system or small as our family. Like my entire family is someone who they work 9 to 5 in a public company, like in the public sector, and they have had the same job since they started working until they will retire. So even in that system, like me as being an entrepreneur and self-employed, I'm again not fitting in. So like there's a lot of resistance when you go through with all of your these different experiences, and the a lot of your audience basically is shouting the same thing, because they are the majority and they have been through all of these things. But like I think that what helps me is kind of come back to myself and speak to people such as yourself, where it's like, I'm not crazy. This is okay. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay kind of to explore and to follow your whatever it is, curiosity, intuition, search, thirst for
Yeah.
knowledge, whatever it is, because that's like it will also propel you forward just in a different way than it did all these other people, basically.
Yeah, I think your example about trying to solve a maths problem and understanding all of the workings and the route to get there, even though like the teachers were looking for a formula which
Yeah.
is about that long and what you wanted to do was this long,
Yeah.
then enforcing that idea that there's like one linear way of doing something
Mhm.
and any deviation is wrong, even though what you were
Yeah.
doing was not wrong. It's perfectly legit because you understand it actually better than everyone else does.
Mhm.
But it's that this is what we expect of you. There's one way to do it. And that I think that kind of just proves like there's an expectation of us from like primary school that you do this one thing and that's great. And if you do something slightly different or you're more creative and or you want to, not go to university,
Yeah.
then deviation, there's always going to be those people who are like, well, that's not how we used to do it, or that's not what everyone else is doing it.
Mhm.
And there's just not, I guess in our age group and community, we're very exposed to people who don't have that route, but it's definitely something that we've grown up with, that
Yeah.
you
And
do one thing, go one way, and you have one end goal, and there's one route to getting that end goal. You go from
yeah.
here to here, not go around here and around here, and you get to the same point maybe, but
Yeah.
there's so much more experience on the other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of coming back to the conversation about kind of feeling inadequate, especially when you're starting your own businesses. I think that feeling of inadequacy is fed by all of these beliefs that we were brought up with. Whatever, like for me, they were whatever I'm doing, it will never be okay. Like whatever I'm doing, it won't be. There's I know that, like now on reflection, I know that I have kind of two sets of audiences, right? Like I have an audience within my own community, and people that are kind of on a similar path as I am, that will resonate with things that I'm saying and will encourage me to do my own thing. And but on the other hand, there's the other audience where whatever I'm doing, they are never satisfied, they never understand. And kind of my my trick now is distancing, distancing from not the audience, but from accepting the beliefs they are kind of trying to send my way, and the distancing from the signals, because I know that, like when I look back, every time I did something this audience was not satisfied by, it was a success for me. So now this acts like a mechanism almost, that if I have an idea and it's not accepted by this audience, I know I'm doing the right thing.
That's a good litmus test, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, as I've said, like,
You do it.
sorry?
If they don't like it, definitely do it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so much data that shows the kind of that points to that exact thing. So now instead of worrying about, oh, but what will they say, or how will they receive it, or what will they think of me, I'm just asking for that feedback. Okay, do they think it's too far off, that it's outrageous, that it doesn't make sense? Good. That means that I'm on my path and I'm doing what I should be doing. Because on the other hand, I have like this other dimension of the other audience, which is stretching my goal and saying, you're not thinking big enough. You can think even bigger. So it's like it's a nice dimension to kind of find yourself in. So that's why I think it's very critical to find your community and like have these conversations, because they show you both sides. Like it's same coin, but it's like different sides of the same coin, where you need to be kind of where you're kind of the space in between, and you need to fill that space with whatever feels right for you. And kind of knowing and understanding both sides is crucial, because haters won't go away tomorrow. There's like, you can't satisfy everyone. There's always going to be someone who's annoyed by whatever you do, or thinking or thinks that you need to do it differently. But that's why it's crucial to find a supportive community who will even encourage you further and motivate you further, and be like, you can you can achieve even more things than you think that you can now. And then it opens your thinking and diminishes that feelings of inadequacy and shame, and thinking like you don't have it in you.
Yeah, it's definitely the polarizing content that some people will be outraged and totally disagree with you, that are the things that start up interesting conversations, aren't they? And that's why I love this podcast so much, because
Thank you.
it's talking about things that loads of people don't want to talk to anyone about. And like, oh my God, I can't show that I've been vulnerable and I've gone through this experience, because it will make me look weak or unprofessional or whatever it is. I've always found, like, if I'm writing an email or telling a story on Instagram or something, and I'm like, is this too much? Is this like going to get a really bad response? And I think it's those, and like more often than not, I just think, fuck it, I'll just post it anyway and see what happens. But those are the ones that I get like messages being like, oh my God, that sounds like the worst scenario ever. I had exactly the same thing. Or that relatability, because that vulnerability I don't think is talked about. And these podcasts have been so interesting because it's so much more real than like your standard marketing podcast where people are like, I've got this thing to sell and we're going to talk about my whole business plan. And I mean, there's value in that. I've done them before, but that's why this one is so valuable, because it's that polarizing content that people like feel really passionately about. And if you don't have that community of people to talk to, like you already said, I'm not crazy because someone else is feeling the exact same thing, that I feel inadequate because I'm not traditional or X, Y, and Z. So yeah, that's why I was really excited to come on and talk to you.
Thank you, and thank you for all of your kind words. It always, it always warms my heart to hear that, because everything that you just said is exactly the point of doing these things. So knowing that that the message is coming through and that they are received as I hoped and intended for them to be received really means so much. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. On the topic of that, I have a question, because just as I was coming off conversation with Sarah, we with another guest, um, I spoke briefly about how I think people are not showing up as themselves, and that we all kind of show up with a with a filter or a mask or like a facade in front of us. And you being someone who tells stories of other people, do you see that in your own work, that kind of people are having challenges telling their own story, thinking that it's not good enough for whatever reason?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, I think from my role as like someone outside of someone else's business, I can see where those links are, or those stories. Like I've done a full analysis of who that audience is, and I've understand their lifestyle and what insecurities they have and what their life goals are, and what they like to do in their spare time, all of that. And so I know I'm like trying to put myself in the position of this person that might potentially want to engage with my world. And they're like, yeah, but it's the same as everyone else's, and again, it's just that articulation that, I think some people just need validation that they're in, you're in your head all the time. You see your business every single day, and it's kind of normal, right? It's just normal. It's not special. It's not outstanding.
Yeah.
And I think some people just need that validation to be able to tell that story, no matter how boring they think it is. If it connects you to the person you're trying to attract, it could be about like picking your kids up from school. It could be like doing a grocery shop. But if you can relate it to the experience of the person that is reading it, that's more powerful than talking about this like grand trip you did to South America where you found yourself and you had this light bulb moment that you need to do this thing for the rest of your life. There's as much value in creating a story to make sure that it relates to someone. And I found it's in the intonation, the tone of voice that you're trying to communicate in that is going to connect with that person. Yeah, you can tell a story about doing your laundry, but if it's got that personality and that emotion in it, you're trying to speak in the same language that your audience is. That's where you can find those like golden nuggets of connection. And yeah, lots of people feel like those stories aren't important and they need to be impressive, but they really don't. I'll tell you the next time I write an about page about someone's doing their laundry, because I'm sure I'll come up with them at some point.
I think it needs to, because, and as you're saying this, I'm thinking, and on the back of our conversation so far about, so if we're just starting our businesses, and even now I'm a year into setting expectations, even less into my other business, so it's like they are all relatively new, and I still can't write my own about page because it feels very cringy. And similar as many other people, I get sucked into thinking that it needs to have like 3 grandiose, like promises or bullet points or pillars or whatever it is. Like, my content needs content pillars and blah blah. Like, I actually remember a time where I was paralyzed from the amount of noise I was receiving from like advice, and I got sucked into that, like almost like tumbling washing machine where I couldn't jump off, and I thought I'm never going to be good enough to put anything out there. And the moment it got to a moment, like it was like I was sick of myself feeling that way. So I was just like, fuck it, I'm doing it. I won't care about the strategy. I don't care about anything. I'll just do it and see where it goes, because otherwise I'll just continue to overthink and I will skip on the doing part. I'll just be like thinking. And what came to my mind now as you were saying all of this is basically the unique selling proposition of everyone is to show up as yourself. And I think that's like having binge watched so many free webinars around marketing and confidence and whatever. There's so many different kinds of advice that they like. Of course, someone's always trying to sell you something, so they need to reflect their own process and value through the webinar itself.
Yeah.
But it all becomes too complicated too soon. And thinking about all of this, and especially what I've done in the last year, or what I've been practicing to do basically, is what you just said. It's like I'm I'm speaking from the place of me, not like nothing else. Like I as my thoughts come, I write them. I don't over edit them. I just like as they it's I'm writing from the experience and I'm sharing it, and it makes it relatable. Not because I intended it, not because I designed it to be relatable, just because it is. And I think kind of having that approach completely unconsciously and not by design is my USP. And I think it's everyone's USP.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, for people that are struggling to write and have that writer's block, you know, you've got like your blinking cursor of doom flashing at you, and you've got these like, remember this thing, and they said this thing in a webinar, I've got to do this structure, but then someone else said to do it differently. I think if you can write, if you think about who you're writing to, find what you have in common and write about that. What do you have, like similar experiences? Do you have similar goals? Do you both love outdoor activities? That's my one.
Yeah.
And if that's your starting point, that's your starting point. But I'd always say, like, from that paralysis of not knowing what to write something you have about something you have in common. You can always come and revisit it later, but actually just putting something down on paper is the hardest thing, and reviewing it and tweaking it and building in that structure and looking at what a framework of a good about page is can come later. But
Yeah.
actually just putting something down on paper to start with is the hardest bit, and
Yeah.
just think what you have in common, and you know that's going to connect with someone.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just kind of being reminded of how I started thinking about all of this, I feel like sometimes learning more about how you should be doing the thing, like what are like some like the tools you should be writing in. Let's take writing as an example, and the frameworks you should be writing, and the number of words and keywords and stuff. Like if you're having trouble to start doing the thing,
Yeah.
adding these obstacles won't help. Toss them away and just like write your, as I would say, like write your shittiest version. Like if you think that your first draft is going to be shitty, then just write the shittiest version of it, and then you can toss that in trash, even though it never happens, right? Like I know um when people would submit their own stories for setting expectations, everyone said, "Well, here's my first draft." We never made it to the second draft, because the first draft is your final version, because you always speak from your experience, and that's exactly how it should be, as at least for this kind of context where we are real and raw and trying to show up as we are completely. So yeah, it's like if you're having trouble to start, which I know I constantly am, it's like think about how can I make this easy and light, and start with there, and then as time goes through you can add more kind of complex things into your work schedule and like work system, but no. Easy and light.
Yeah, I think like that's what's worked so well for these podcasts is it's just so much more organic, isn't it? You don't have to think of like, right, I want to make this point, so I'm going to tell this story to get this point, and this
Yeah.
is the thing, this is our conclusion at the end that's nice and tidy and tied up in a bow. And
Yeah.
I mean, that works really well if it's like something educational and you're trying
Yeah.
to, you know, show you start here, this is the process, you end here, this is what you will achieve at the end.
Yeah.
But I think for this, it's so much nicer to have that organic, here's a starting point, we'll see where we go, and then all sorts of shit comes up, and it's so much more, I mean, listening to all your other ones has been so much more valuable than having a structure of say this, these are the questions, because you relate it more to your experience, don't you, than getting cut off halfway through an answer because you've
Yeah.
got a list of things to do.
Yeah. And I know that if you would make me script these, I will give up tomorrow because I don't like. I just that doesn't work with me as a person. So like I know immediately that as soon as I feel and sense that the build up and like the tension, and then I'm not doing that. So my filter for any process or for any activity is like, how does it feel inside of my own body? This feels nice and casual and relaxed, and I love it. But if I was, like to kind of prepare a script and think about like just like I think there's too much of that already, and I want us to be more, more relaxed and more chill and more open. And of course I always worry, oh shit, like my podcast doesn't have a structure. It's probably difficult to follow for some people. I constantly over worry about these things, and I constantly question myself, oh, but should I change it because it's really different. Maybe the reason why people are not doing it this way is because it doesn't make sense. Keep like all of these things in my head, but then I just revert back and think it is reaching the people it needs to reach. Like then the people who need it will find it. If it's only one person listening, I'm happy. And that's what I always just kind of come back to. It makes me happy, and if only one person listens to the episode, it makes me happy, and that's it. End of story.
I think that's so perfectly like making a point of our idea of not like a linear expected route to somewhere, not doing what everyone else is doing what feels good, finding that, and like there's its own special value in that. That just perfectly fits our podcast topic, doesn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. I think it also like really nicely everything that we've talked to. Like you said it like in 3 points, our like 1 hour conversation. And I think like what you've said about all of the previous podcast episodes that were out similarly, or I think this one will also feel valuable for anyone else listening. And I'm curious how you will find listening to your own voice on the podcast episode. Now I always feel still kind of I vary off re-listening to the podcast more times than I need to, because I listening back to my own voice feels weird, even though I would like to come back to the conversations and re-listen to them, because it brings me back to this moment, and then I appreciate it even more.
I feel like talking to people on a podcast and recording it, I'm like so chilled and I love it and I get really into it and really excited and I feel amazing afterwards. And then I listened and I'm like, oh God, it's gone live. I'm gonna listen to it back. And that's where all the like fear comes in. And a lot of people I think would feel nervous and the recording part of it. But I love that bit. It's the listening back that I'm like, I'm not gonna do it. I refuse.
Yeah. I'm exactly the same. I had for this other business that I run, I had a couple of like TV appearances in the last month, and I really loved going live. I didn't rewatch the show because I just can't. No, no, it's enough from me. I love doing it as you said. Like I get really excited, and the experience is amazing. But I will not watch it unless you really make me with something that has a big consequence.
Well, these are obviously skills that we've learned in our random jobs in
Yes,
air quotes.
exactly. And I look forward to having even more randomness in our lives, because I don't feel like just like to sum this up and to kind of to sum it up is what I'm doing now, and I think what you're doing now as well. Like even though we're speaking about it from now almost like finite moment, it's the moment is not finite, and it doesn't mean that in a year's time when we might have another conversation that we will be in the same place or doing the same things the last like 10, 15, 20 years have been. different and random, the next 10, 15 years could be the same. And I just think that kind of realizing that it's not linear and it can be as squiggly as possible and full of colors and patterns and like trees on the way. That's all. It's all fine. That's what makes it fun, I think.
Yeah, more squiggly. We all need more squiggly in our
More
lives.
squiggly. Okay, so thank you so much, Alice, for joining me today. I had so much fun, and I think we could chat for 2 more hours, but I'm appreciative of your time, and I can't wait to listen back to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Franca. It's been an absolute joy. I've enjoyed it so much, and
Uh,
we have to do another one about squiggly.
yes, definitely. I'm yeah, all how do you say in English? This is I hate this part of being like multilingual because I blank on a certain expression in English. But yeah, we can all everyone prays squiggly careers basically.
Thank you so much, mate.
Thank you. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.